Hello everyone, welcome back to another book-based video on the channel. Today, as we approach the halfway point of the year, what I've noticed some of the people that I follow doing is like this Mid-Year Freakout Tag or something, I think it's called. I need to get like the official name for it really, don't I? Yeah, Mid-Year Freakout Book Tag 2025. So this is something that some people will do every year when they reach kind of the halfway point of the year, which somehow we have reached, just to kind of check in on their reading for the first half of the year and discuss and look back on the books that they've read, based on certain questions in categories that this tag kind of presents to you. So I don't know who started this, who came up with these questions originally. I've just found people who've done them, so I'm going to give them a go myself. There's 15 sort of categories, if you will, superlatives to kind of get through. So we're just going to talk through some of the things that I've read this year. I've read about 40-ish books, I think, so far this year. Number one is the best book you've read in 2025 so far. I do have a couple of choices for this that I will talk about just because I gave both of these 5 stars, so I kind of have to talk about them both. The first one, if you are familiar with the channel, you will have seen me talk about, and that is Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. I read this for my A to Z reading challenge, so you can check out the video where I talk about this for a bit more detailed thoughts on how I felt about this, but this book really spoke to me on scarily intimate levels, actually. I really enjoyed the story behind this. I thought the main character was really interesting. I thought the plot went in interesting directions. I still don't know how I feel about the ending, but the kind of emotional journey I went on through this, I just powered through it, and I just really loved it. Kaveh Akbar, I think, is usually a poet, and I think this is their first novel, and just the language that they use telling this story and the way it's written, I just think it's so brilliantly done. So yeah, 5 stars. This is my only 5-star in my A to Z reading challenge so far. Hopefully there will be more at some point, but it's not my only 5-star of the year, because recently I read When Women Were Dragons by Kelly Barnhill. I loved this. As soon as I kind of saw what the premise was, I was like, yeah, I'm in. I don't think it's going to be for everyone, and I can imagine like another version of this story that I would also just really love, because it's not all dragony. There's not loads and loads of dragon action in it. It gets a bit more towards the end, but if you're thinking, ooh, a story about women in the 1950s Wisconsin who by their hundreds of thousands spontaneously turn to dragons, and fly away, maybe sometimes eat their husbands. It's like all these oppressed women who turn to dragons. It's kind of like hushed up and people just don't talk about it, and it's kind of exploring the aftermath of that through the eyes of our main character, whose name was Alex, I believe, and her aunt was one of the people that turned into a dragon and vanished. So it's kind of following her and how this has kind of affected her life. And it's definitely more so about that than about like the dragons itself, but it's kind of talking about oppression and sexism, female rage, those kind of like themes. And it's not subtle about that in regards to turning into dragons, but I don't think it needed to be, and I don't think it was trying to be subtle with that. I think maybe it could have been a really good short story as well. And there were times when I thought, where's this going next? I can't see them continuing this story and filling another like 200 pages or whatever. But for me, it really did work. I don't know the general consensus on this book, but I was just kind of enthralled right from the start, and I loved the idea behind it. I ended up really liking where the story went, and I thought Alex was a really interesting and flawed main character. And when we did get sort of dragon action, I thought it was really well done, quite effective, and a very different, I think, interpretation and description of dragons and how they would usually be used in media, which I thought was quite refreshing. So I really, really love this story. It's not going to be for everyone, for sure. I would maybe, to avoid disappointment, really delve into like what the plot and the focus is. Because if you're going into this expecting, women turn to dragons and we're just going to spend all our time with them, you don't. You kind of spend more time with the people that are left behind. But I love that. And I think I'd love a version of this book that explores and follows the dragons a bit more. But I also really adored the version that we get from Kelly Barnhill. Another 5-star read for this year, and those are definitely the top 2 books that I've read so far. So question number 2 is the best sequel that you read in 2025 so far. I haven't actually read many sequels, so I didn't have much to choose from. But I think even if they had other competition, these might count on top anyway. But I am going to say these 2 from Richard Osman, The Man Who Died Twice and The Last Devil to Die. These are the 2nd and 4th books in the Thursday Murder Club series, which I did a video on earlier this year of trying the entire series for the first time, giving my thoughts on all 4 books that are currently out. The 5th one is due out later this year. But yeah, I think it's about, it's like a murder mystery series with a group of people in a retirement home who kind of solve murders. And yeah, I think The Man Who Died Twice has like the best mystery. Some really kind of laugh out loud character moments in there. I really adore these characters. This is a great kind of example of that. And I do think plot wise, this is probably the strongest one. But for emotions and attachment to the characters and payoff to all these sorts of things that are slowly building across the first 3 books, and The Last Devil to Die definitely, packs an emotional punch. And has, some really nice things to say about ending your life with dignity. And yeah, just what you should do with the last few years of your life and how best to live them. And, I think the mystery was still really good in this one as well. Definitely one of the stronger ones, but I think The Man Who Died Twice did have the best mystery. So yeah, these are definitely the best 2 sequels that I read this year. Not that they had really any competition, but still, they were great. Question number 3 is a new release you haven't read yet but want to. I've got quite a few choices for this, and I don't actually physically own them, so I'll just have them kind of, pop up in the corner of the screen. But I think this is in release order. We'll have to wait and see. And this one came out, I think, like November last year, so it's not like necessarily a new release, but still. And it is Teen Titans Starfire, which is a series by, I think it's illustrated by Gabriel Piccolo, and I think it's written by Cami Garcia. I may have completely gotten those names wrong. I really should have looked that up, but it's this like graphic novel series about the Teen Titans. It's kind of like an origin story for all of them, and they've steadily kind of been building this team. The next one in the series that came out last year was Starfire, and I don't know if it's out this year or next year, but there's one more book to come called Teen Titans Together, which kind of is going to conclude the series. And I've really enjoyed these. I love the art style. I really like the characters, mainly because Beast Boy is one of my favourite comic book characters, and the series started with him. Him and Raven, I think, kind of got books, and it's been building since then. And yeah, I really enjoyed those. And they're very quick reads, but they're really fun reads. And yeah, I just couldn't really afford to get it when it came out, but I still really want to catch up with that series before it concludes. And then the other 2 I had for this were Death at the White Hart by Chris Chibnall. This is like a murder mystery story, and Chris Chibnall was a former Doctor Who showrunner. He was a showrunner during the Jodie Whittaker era, which I personally really liked, and he wrote for episodes of Doctor Who prior to that as well. I think probably his best received work is Broadchurch, which is a murder mystery drama that ran for 3 series, which starred David Tennant, Olivia Colman and Jodie Whittaker, among others. And that show proved that Chris Chibnall was really good at writing murder mysteries. So the fact that he then wrote a murder mystery book and it came out earlier this year, I was like, yes, I need that. So it's just other things have kind of grabbed my attention beforehand, but I absolutely want to check that out very soon. because, you know, I'm getting more and more into like the murder mystery sort of genre. And then finally, Sunrise on the Reaping, which is, you know, the newest installment in the Hunger Games series by Suzanne Collins. It's obviously a prequel focusing on Haymitch, who's probably my favourite character in the franchise. I still haven't actually read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes yet, but obviously this one came out not too long ago, and everyone was kind of hyping it up and saying it was really good. And I really enjoy the Hunger Games series, so I do want to check that out. And I do want to read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and Sunrise on a Reaping before I watch their respective movies. Obviously, Songbird and Snakes has already gotten its movie with Rachel Zegler, but I haven't actually seen that yet. I want to read the book before I watch the film. Same is the case for Sunrise on the Reaping, but I've heard brilliant things, so I really do need to check that out quite soon. Number 4 is the most anticipated release for the second half of 2025. So I've got 2 for this one. The first one, I've already mentioned this series, so I might as well get out of the way. This is The Impossible Fortune by Richard Osman. It's out in September. This is the 5th instalment in the Thursday Murder Club series, and because I completely fell in love with that series earlier this year, I'm anxiously awaiting the next instalment. And I think it's going to be more of like a fun sort of romp of a novel compared to The Last Devil to Die, which was quite heavy. And I think the series does need that. So I'm very excited to check back in with those characters. And then the other one, I don't know how to pronounce the name. It's like Catabasis. I'm having a thing with, you know, not knowing exactly how to pronounce books from this author, you know, the titles. But this is by R.F. Kuang, who I will be talking about again a bit later on. But this is her new novel that's due out later this year. And, you know, for reasons that I will talk about soon, I'm very, very excited for a release from her and her, you know, newest release. So when that comes out, I'll definitely be grabbing it. I don't know if I'll read it immediately, but I absolutely will be getting it as soon as it comes out because it seems really, really intriguing. And number 5 is biggest disappointment of 2025 so far. Again, a couple ones for these. I think I would give a shout out to Third Girl by Agatha Christie, just because it's my first Agatha Christie novel, and I made the mistake of, well, it's not really a mistake because it's just it's just the book that I was given. I didn't actively seek it out, but I read a much later Christie novel, and I think, you know, her writing started to decline a bit in her latter years, and that certainly showed in Third Girl. So when it was like my first Agatha Christie, I was quite disappointed that I really didn't like that book very much. But, you know, I do need to check out some of her earlier works, and I think I'll get the bug then. But that was a shame to have that be my first thing with Agatha Christie, but still. Next, Galapagos by Kurt Vonnegut. If you've been watching my A to Z reading challenge videos, you will know how I feel about this one. I mean, I'm not going to say this is like my biggest disappointment. I do have a proper answer. These are kind of like honourable mentions, I guess. Just because I'd never heard of this book until I looked for a book beginning with G for this challenge. So it's not like I've been wanting to read it for ages and read it and I was like, oh no, that's not as good as I hoped. I guess it's more disappointing because I thought it started out quite strong and I was really liking it at the start and I really liked the writing style, but the actual plot just goes off the rails and got really boring and weird and strange, and not in an interesting way. So yeah, that was kind of a shame. And also, I'm going to have to say, sadly, Life of Pi by Jan Martel is a bit of a disappointment to me. I really, really wanted to like this a lot more than I did. I also read this for my A to Z reading challenge. It's just too long. That's the long and short of it. It's way too long and padded and just quite dull for the middle portion of the book, which is a huge shame. It was a bit of a slog for me to get through. So then, yeah, that's kind of sad. But my main answer for this, and what I'd actually say is my biggest disappointment, is The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells, which I read earlier this year. And oh boy, was I disappointed with it. I've wanted to read H.G. Wells for a very long time, so to have the chance and opportunity to finally read one, I was very excited for. And I've always wanted to read The Invisible Man because I just thought it was a really cool concept. It's kind of one of the classics, in many ways. So I wanted to check it out. And I read the first chapter, and it's one of my favourite first chapters I think I've ever read. It was really good, and then it just nosedives in quality, and it's just meandering, and nothing happens. The plot is just not there. It's invisible, and I was very sad about that. And there's obviously some outdated views in there, as is to be expected, sadly, from a book that old. But yeah, just the whole plot line, really, there's just nothing there. and it's such a tedious and boring execution of a brilliant idea, and it was just such a shame. So that's definitely my biggest disappointment so far this year. Okay, number 6 on the list is biggest surprise of 2025. I've got a couple of answers for this one. First of all, The Hound of the Baskervilles by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This is obviously one of the Sherlock Holmes novels. In this edition, it's combined with The Valley of Fear, which is the 4th and final novel that he wrote. But yeah, The Hound of the Baskervilles is the 3rd Sherlock Holmes novel. It released sort of like in the middle, I think, of the short stories that were coming out. This was actually the first Sherlock Holmes thing that came out after Conan Doyle killed Sherlock Holmes off in The Final Problem, and obviously then, revived him many years later. It's one of the most famous Sherlock Holmes stories. One of the most adapted, for sure. So I was excited to kind of finally get to it. I read all the novels first, and then I read the short stories earlier this year. I read the complete Sherlock Holmes. And this was definitely one of the standouts, The Hound of the Baskervilles. Right from the off, it's just like, wow, this is really great. And I thought I would enjoy a lot of the Sherlock Holmes stuff. That's why I've really wanted to check them out for all these years. But this is a surprise just because, it's such an old book. That was like, is some of the language not going to quite work for me? There are going to be some things in here that I'm just like, ooh, God. For the most part, I really did not find that with The Hound of the Baskervilles. I thought it was really well written. I thought the character work was really good in it. I thought Sherlock Holmes as a character was, probably at his best for me in The Hound of the Baskervilles. I really enjoyed the mystery. Obviously, I kind of knew a lot of where it was going because I've seen a lot of adaptations of it. But just the way it's all described and everything, being from the different points of view that it provides us. Very atmospheric. The pacing's brilliant. I never got bored at all. I couldn't stop reading it. So it was just a huge surprise, I think, just how much I enjoyed The Hound of the Baskervilles. I think it holds up to novels coming out today in terms of its quality and how readable it is, I guess. So yeah, really, really surprised at just how much I enjoyed The Hound of the Baskervilles. That might even be like a 4.5, 5-star read for me this year. And then my other surprise is Exhalation by Ted Chiang, and this is a very pleasant surprise because again, I had never heard of Ted Chiang or his short stories before I did my A to Z reading challenge, and then I just bought this on a whim because I know I wanted to do a short story collection for one of the letters, and Exhalation just managed to fill the E slot. And then I read them, and I was, enraptured and amazed and head over heels in love with Ted Chiang's writing, and so many of them, made me weep. And I was just so in tune with his writing immediately, and I was like, oh my God, I've got a new favourite author here. So yeah, I was surprised at just how much these emotionally affected me, and just how well written they were, and just how effective short stories could be, because I really haven't delved into them for the most part, other than the Sherlock Holmes ones earlier this year. But I was like, wow, you can do that with short stories? Holy moly. So this was a big surprise for me because I'd never heard of this, and it then just became one of my favourite things that I've read this year, and I still think about these stories all the time. So number 7 is favourite new author, either as a debut or new to you in 2025. So my 2 answers for this are, as I just talked about him, we just talk about him again, Ted Chiang, of course, who wrote these amazing sci-fi short stories. So this is his 2nd collection, Exhalation, and I've now also got his 1st collection, Stories of Your Life and Others. I haven't read this yet, but I'm very excited to, because I've heard these are just as good, if not better, than Exhalation. And yeah, I love what he does with his short stories. I love the way he writes. I love what he has to say. I love the conclusion that he draws with his stories. I love how emotional they can be. So yeah, if he ever posts more short stories and stuff, I am there. I need to consume more from this man because he's an absolute genius. So he's become a new favourite author this year that I've discovered. And the other one I would talk about is R.F. Kuang, who I mentioned earlier as well. And yeah, so I read Yellowface by her last year and really, really liked it. Because I'd heard the hype about it as it was coming out. So it's always been on my radar. And I really enjoyed this. And because I think with that book, it says her name is Rebecca F. Kwang. So I kind of didn't even realise for a while that some of the books I was interested in were by the same author, because sometimes she's R.F. Kwang, sometimes she's Rebecca F. Kwang. And I'd heard a lot of hype about Babel as well. And it took me a while to realise, oh, it's by her. And also when I was doing the A to Z reading challenge, I asked for suggestions. One of my friends suggested the Poppy War trilogy. And again, I didn't realise that was by her until I kind of looked into it a bit more. So I do have these to check out at some point. And I am actually about a fifth of the way through Babel. I'm currently making my way through this. I'm really, really enjoying it. And because I enjoyed Yellowface so much, and I've now kind of been enjoying this, and I think I'm really going to like the Poppy War trilogy as well. This is kind of like we'll have to wait and see, but probably a new favourite author for me that I've discovered recently. But yeah, I love her writing style. I love her character work. I like her setting. And yeah, I just think her writing's really, really going to work for me. And that's why I'm so excited for her new book that's coming out this year as well. So really loving this so far. I really loved Yellowface. I think I'll love the Poppy War trilogy. So R.F. Kwang, I think, is kind of basically on my list of new favourite all-time authors. Number 8 is newest fictional crush in 2025. So, a couple of answers for this one. I would say Bogdan from the Thursday Murder Club series. What a man. Also Eleonora from A Werewolf's Guide to Seducing a Vampire. Vampires, man. I don't know. I can't explain the hold they have on me, but vampires, yes. And Eleanor is a great example, shall we just say. Also, sort of Ben as well, the werewolf, because, you know, werewolves maybe also have a sort of hold on me for some reason. I can't explain it, it just is what it is. But yeah, Eleanor in particular, I really kind of grew attached to. You know, she's very kind of fiery, very funny. And yeah, just a really fun character. And a vampire, which is always going to help. So there's that. And then finally, I'd also say Tarek from Keepers of the Crossing, The Dark Friars by Ryan J. Hamshaw. Tarek, oh my god. You know, if you read this, I think you'll just know. And I don't want to spoil anything on any of these, but yeah. Lots of new characters that I get far too emotionally attached to and obsessed with, as is my want, quite frankly, as is just what I do. It happens to my detriment most of the time, all the time. So yeah, those are some that I thought were like standouts for this year. And then number 9 is newest favourite character in 2025. Again, another couple of answers for these, and I am again referencing the Thursday Murder Club series. I would have to give this one to Joyce. You know, this is normally written in third person, but sometimes these books do go to first person because Joyce kind of like writes stuff down in her diary, and sometimes we get like diary entries from her, and they're so funny. And Joyce is such an absolute sweetheart, but also can be stone cold in the best way. And she's just an absolute delight to read about. She's made me laugh out loud so many times. Definitely my favourite character in the Thursday Murder Club series. But yeah, there's just so much to her. And you don't really think there is at first, but as the layers peel away, you kind of realise just how deep and complex and interesting Joyce is. But she has so much heart to her. She's so funny. But, you know, she has nerves of steel at times as well. Other times she really doesn't. So she just feels so, like, human. And I really enjoy how Joyce is written in particular. So she's definitely kind of a new favourite character for me this year. Also, I would say Cyrus from Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. Just because I related so strongly to Cyrus and his struggles and his kind of thoughts on the world and his emotional journey in this just really spoke to me and resonated with me incredibly deeply. So I saw a lot of myself in Cyrus, and I really kind of grew attached to him through that. And then finally, I would also say Death from Hogfather by Terry Pratchett. Again, laugh out loud funny at times. I really enjoy his role in the story of like pretending to be the Hogfather and kind of filling that void after the Hogfather goes missing. And I know that Death is like a recurring character in the Discworld series and is like multiple novels with him kind of like as a focus of a character. So that gets me really, really excited to read more from Discworld, because I really enjoyed Death in this. I also like Mr. Tea Time in this, but I feel like this is his only appearance. So the fact that we see more of Death in other books in this series does get me excited to check them out, because I really found Death surprisingly delightful to read about. Just a really fun interpretation, I guess, of a character like that. So yeah, that's definitely another standout character this year. Number 10 is a book that made you cry this year. Once again, here we are. But this one, not just the series in general, this specific book, The Last Devil to Die, was very emotional, as it talks about end-of-life care and things like that, and what some of the characters go through in this one. There's some beautiful kind of phrases and words about this, and I think some of the character relationships, the kind of payoff to the build-up of these friendships over the previous 3 books leading into this one just really, really works. And even some moments outside of that got me a bit teary. So I'm so attached to these characters when they're kind of suffering and going through stuff. Just gets me. And this one in particular, the plot of this one, really hits home and hits hard. And yeah, got quite emotional at that. And then the other answer is, of course, Exhalation Again by Ted Chiang, because some of these short stories, man, so well written, so beautifully poetic in what they want to say. There's one story that's set in, I guess it's like a parallel universe or something, I think. And it's from the point of view of this automaton man, I guess. In, I guess, sort of the last days of their existence. The conclusions that it kind of draws about the human race and life really got to me. And, that was oh man. And one of the shortest stories in this, actually, is surprisingly from the point of view of a parrot. It's only 4 or 5 pages, but it's beautiful, and the very last line really made me cry, and I'm tearing up just thinking about it now, so I need to stop talking about it. But yeah, these two are definitely the biggest, I think, perpetrators of my tears in 2025 so far. Number 11 is a book that made you happy this year. So I would again bring up Hogfather, just because I loved the world and I loved the characters in this. It was just delightful to kind of be in their presence. And again, this was kind of laugh out loud funny at many occasions. So I really enjoyed kind of experiencing this and just kind of being present in this story. And it was just a very comforting kind of read at the end of every day to kind of dive back in for a chapter or two. And yeah, just a delight. So this made me very happy. And then also, not because of what happens in the books or the content, it's just because she's one of my favourite authors and I love her writing. And it's so nice to read something. I'm like, this is just great. This is just so good. This is just perfect for me. So we'll obviously talk about Leigh Bardugo, who is responsible for writing my favourite books ever. And I read Ninth House by her earlier this year as part of my A to Z reading challenge. The video with this in hasn't come out yet, obviously, because I'm still in the middle of recording that bunch of books and talking about those. But yeah, just reading Leigh Bardugo makes me feel happy, because I just love her writing so much and I love her worlds and characters, and this was no exception. Spoiler alert for my thoughts on this. Says that I also, as is just a default setting for me, I did reread Six of Crows by her earlier this year, because it's my favourite book ever, along with Crooked Kingdom, which is the second book in this duology. I love the characters so much. I'm still so angry at Netflix for cancelling Shadow and Bone and the Six of Crows spin-off. Those actors were perfect, and they deserved to be able to adapt this story, and I'm so fucking sad and angry that they didn't get that opportunity, and I will forever be bitter. But it's always just such oddly comforting to revisit these characters, and it's just the perfect duology. I don't know what to tell you. The plot is 10 out of 10, the characters are 10 out of 10, the writing's 10 out of 10, everything is just amazing in this. If you're a fan of fantasy, I think these are must reads, this duology. It's so good. So yeah, just spending time again with my favourite characters ever, in my favourite book ever. is always going to make me happy. So there's that one too. Number 12 is an interesting one. It's your favourite book to movie adaptation that you've seen this year. I didn't really have many. And it's interesting in a way because I haven't consumed like every version of this to like properly give an opinion. Because I watched Mickey 17 earlier this year, which is a Robert Pattinson film, which is an adaptation of a book. I think it's Mickey 7 is what it's called, and they just, I guess, added more Mickeys in for the film, I don't know. But I haven't read Mickey 7, so I can't really compare that to the film. And even then, I thought the film was just fine. I wanted to like it a lot more than I actually did. I thought Robert Pattinson's brilliant in it though. But yeah, I thought it was okay. You know, good, not great, I would say. But, you know, I haven't really seen many book to screen adaptations this year, so I don't have many things to talk about. So that's one of my default answers, I guess. I felt my real answer probably would be How to Train Your Dragon, the live action remake of that. I watched that last week. But again, I haven't seen the original animation version that came out God knows when, and B, I haven't read the original book that animation was therefore based on, and then this live action was based on that one. So I can't compare it to anything because I haven't seen the original animation film and I haven't read the book. But I did really, really enjoy the live action remake. But again, maybe I liked it more than most because that's me experiencing that story for the first time and I have nothing to compare it to. I can't say like, oh, the animation was so much better, or oh, the book was so much better, because I can't compare it to that. So I guess anything I can say for this question is kind of just a default answer because, you know, I didn't have much choice and I don't have anything to compare it to properly. But that's that. Number 13 is your favourite post or review that you've written this year. If you aren't aware, I do have a profile on Substack where you can kind of just write anything really. I've written 2 short stories on there this year. And the second one, I think I wrote in like March or something. It's called The Good in Goodbye. So that would be my answer for this one because I am very, very proud of that kind of little shortish story. And I am actually working on maybe adapting that into something a bit longer, but who knows if that will ever see the light of day. Either way, The Good and Goodbye is about an imaginary friend, you know, on the very last day that they spend with their real life friend who kind of dreamt them up in the first place. Because I kind of had the idea, like, what if imaginary friends know what their last day with their friend is going to be, you know. So it follows, you know, an imaginary friend on their last day and they talk about, you know, what's next for them, what's going to happen to them. Just sort of things like that. And I just kind of, I've had that idea for a while and I just bashed it out one evening and I was actually really proud of how it turned out. So, you know, I guess I'll link that in the description or whatever and you can check it out if you want to. So there's that one. And then number 14 is the most beautiful book that you've bought or received this year. I would have to say, where did I put it? Is it down here? Again, Hogfather by Terry Pratchett. I love this edition. I think it's such a beautiful cover. Really nicely illustrated. It's kind of like embossed as well, so stuff like stands out and it's, you know, got a bit of shininess going on. So this is a really, really beautiful illustration. I love this cover so much. This probably is like my top choice, but I would also give a shout out to something that I got in Cardiff recently, which is Voyage of the Damned by Francis White even. Yeah, again, it's just shiny and it looks quite nice. So I really like the look of this as well. Not that I've read it yet, but we'll get to that in good time. And yeah, so some really nice, I guess, shiny covers are what attract me and I find really pretty. But I think I would definitely, overall, I would give it to Hogfather. Just a really lovely edition. And then finally, number 15, books you need to read by the end of the year. I mean, I could just talk forever about this, but I've got a select few to talk about. First of all, some for my A to Z reading challenge, because I really want to finish that by the end of this year. That's kind of like my main reading goal, is to have that done by the end of the year. I think I will be able to easily do that, but we'll wait and see. Who knows what is going to happen in the next 6 months. But yeah, I thought I'd just talk through the ones I own currently for the rest of the A to Z reading challenge that I own physically to talk about. So we have Scythe by Neil Shusterman to read. I've got For Tea, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. For ST, I don't have U yet. I've got V, obviously we've just talked about it, Voyage of the Damned by Francis White. And then I think finally for W, we've got Wicked by Gregory Maguire. So those are like 4 of many that I still have to read for the rest of the A to Z reading challenge, but those are the only ones that I currently physically own. So I thought I'd just show those off. So I've got those to read. Also, 2 that I really want to get ticked off this year. We have Forever Forward, the inside story of McLaren Formula 1 by Ben Hunt. This is a very recent acquirement from me that I got at the supermarket recently. I'm a big Formula 1 fan, I'm a big McLaren fan, big fan of Norris and Piastri, the 2 drivers for McLaren currently. And they're having a very good season currently, so I really want to read this as soon as possible so I can enjoy it to its maximum potential, because if there's anything that's true with Formula 1 is that eventually a team will fall off and will kind of start to struggle a bit before they inevitably rise up again. It happens for basically every team. McLaren's on a pretty high right now, and I want to ride that wave and just enjoy and experience this while not being depressed and reading it being like, oh gosh, they're not this good anymore. So I need to get this done pretty soon, and I think I probably will. Like, as I'm recording this, I'm watching the Formula 1 movie at the cinema tonight with my dad, so that's probably going to get me in a proper Formula 1 mood, and I might just start this almost immediately. So we'll see. Either way, I do want to get this done by the end of the year. And then one more thing to talk about, Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters by Rick Riordan. Still don't know how to pronounce his surname. But yeah, this is the second Percy Jackson book. And the main reason I want to read this by the end of the year is because I think season 2 of the show is either out at the end of this year or next year. And I read the first book before the first season of the show came out, so I want to read the second book before the second season of the show comes out. So that's why I kind of have a deadline for the end of the year. I think this will probably be a pretty high priority for me to do once I finish my A to Z reading challenge. I'll try and get this out of the way because, they're very easy reads. I don't think this will take me too long to get through. I can probably get through this in like a day or 2 if I have those days off. So, yeah, I do want to kind of continue in that series. So that's another one that I want done by the end of the year. And with that, we come to the end of this Mid-Year Freakout Book Tag. That actually, I really rambled on longer than I thought I would, but that's me. But, yeah. There's a kind of everything I had to say about those, 15 superlatives regarding my reading so far this year. So, I've had a pretty good reading year so far, I must say. I think I've already read more this year than I read most years. I've just really gotten into reading a lot more again this year. There's only been maybe 2 or 3 like absolute duds in terms of stuff I've read, and so I've had a pretty good track record of at least like liking things that I've read this year, if not really liking or loving. So yeah, I guess that's kind of everything I wanted to talk about. Let me know what some of your answers to any of those questions would be. And yeah, the A to Z reading challenge part 3 video will be coming God knows when. I've got another 3 books to read before that video can go out, so who knows, but stay tuned, there'll be more. And I'll probably have a book haul and unhaul before then to come out anyway, so we'll see. But either way, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed me doing this, and I'll see you when I see you.